show you it's grooving. I'm feeling it 'cause it's gonna be. We're about to get it going. Our happiness is showing. We're rocking it 'cause it's gonna be. Great day. Great day in Houston. Great day.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Great Day Houston. I'm Cristina Kooker, and I'll be your host for today's show. Deborah is out on assignment or at the spa. We don't really know. No, I'm just playing. She'll be back on Monday, but I'm excited to be here with you today. We start this morning with two leaders in our community who want your relationship to be the best it can be. They know how to put the spark back in your marriage and how to keep it that way. Clayton and Ashlee Hurst are the directors of marriage and parenting at Lakewood Church, and the authors of the book Hope for Your Marriage. Clayton and Ashlee are with us today. Okay, so as I just said, you're the directors of marriage and parenting, but
Yes.
you've got some really good bragging rights, and that's that you've been married for 22 years.
Yes.
We have.
You have 3 children.
Yes.
Yes.
But you're here to kind of tell us that it's not all mushy gushy face and rose
No.
petals, right?
No, it's not. And that's what we thought it was going to be like.
Right.
You know, we both come from really great families. Clayton's parents have been married now for over 50 years. My parents have been married for almost 50 years. So we just thought, oh, this will be easy. You know, they did a great job at it. You know, we'll be fine.
Right.
And we weren't. You know, it started out with funny things that we would, you know, we at first thought were comical, like, why is he doing that? Why is she doing this? I thought she was going to be able to cook, but she can't cook. You know, those things, you know, why does he fold the towels this way? But then it ended up being some really bad communication, some really hurt feelings. We would say things to each other that were really hurtful. And 5 years in, we found ourselves in this valley of hopelessness, and we didn't know what to do. And we were embarrassed to tell anybody. Clayton was a pastor at our home church at the time, and we were so embarrassed to talk to anybody, and so we just kind of put on a mask and pretended like everything was fine and we were good, but then we would come home and it was like we were roommates instead of married to each other. And it was really painful. I was pregnant with our first child, and I went through postpartum depression, and so we just are. It was the makings of a complete disaster, and we really didn't know where to turn. And so thankfully, you know, our faith helped us. You know, God really spoke to his heart, and he came home and apologized, and we apologized, and we started the process, the slow process of working it through. But yeah, marriage is so hard. I mean, it's always, you know, there's always going to be challenges, regardless of how many years you've been married.
Right, but here you are today, you know, counseling people. You work with new couples, couples in crisis, really everybody. And there's one universal question y'all ask to kind of say either this is going to work or it's not. What's that question?
We always ask, are you willing to do whatever it takes to have the marriage that you've always hoped and dreamed of? You know, and because once you're willing, you can go through anything. Once you're willing, if you're both willing to do that, I know for Ashlee and I, we really prepared for the wedding day a lot more than we prepared for the days after.
Right.
You know, Ashlee mentioned my parents. I think I calculated one time for 50 years of marriage, that's over 18,000 days that you're going to be together, you know, and that takes a lot of time.
You really did the math.
I really did the math.
A lot of days.
It was a huge accomplishment to get there, but, you know, I think that it's so important to realize that, you know what, every day you're growing as an individual. So just like you're growing as an individual, you have to grow in your marriage. You know, and if you want to be great at anything, you got to put the work in. You've got to work at it. So if we ask people, are you willing to do whatever it takes to have the marriage you've always hoped and dreamed of? Then we can always circle back around if they say, well, I'm not willing to do this or I'm not willing to do that, but wait a minute, you said you were willing to do whatever it took. And so sometimes that means laying your pride down. Sometimes that means changing the way you respond. And that was really our key, was instead of responding like she was on the opposite team, realizing that I needed to respond like she was on my team. So if she wins, I win. If she loses, I lose. And so that's a huge question that we ask couples.
And we always talk about, I know I do, it's the strong people get stronger because they get help or they work at it.
Right.
And you had a great quote from your mom about their marriage.
Yeah, last year for our Spark conference, they came in, they were celebrating their 55th wedding anniversary, and I asked them, I'm like, why are you coming to Houston in August to celebrate your 55th wedding anniversary? And she said, Clayton, she said, the moment we stop learning, it'll be the day we stop growing in our marriage. And I said, oh, I got to write that down. You know, and so we realized that even though we've been married for 22 years, years, we're still learning, we're still growing, you know, and we're going to keep that happening until one of us takes our last breath.
Yeah. And you wrote that down, and y'all put it in your book. Your book, Hope for Your Marriage. Talk about a lot of great things in there. I love that y'all kind of started off with the happily ever after myth, because we start right out of the gate with this. It's going to be great, and then we're on our on our honeymoon, and we're already fighting about whatever it is, you know. So to kind of tell us about that, and about the whole myth and the conception, and especially today with social media, it's like you want to pretend you're something that you're not.
Yeah, that was us. We just thought we were going to ride off into the sunset. I had that whole princess mentality of, he's my Prince Charming and everything's going to be wonderful. We lived in this little log cabin out in the woods. His family owned the land, and it was just so like the picture of just this sweet little family, right? But it wasn't. Like Clayton said, we didn't take the time to learn. There's so much to know about marriage. For us, with our faith, what does the Bible say about marriage? What does God have to say about it? There's so many differences between men and women. Learn about those differences and how you can make those work together instead of apart. Love languages. I know we're going to talk about that later, which we have Dr. Gary Chapman coming to our conference, but the author of the 5 love languages. But that was a big thing for us to learn how to love each other. We didn't know. I show love in a completely different way than he shows love, and that caused a lot of fights because we didn't understand that. So yeah, you can't go into marriage with that fairy tale myth. You've got to go into marriage getting the resources that will help you sustain through 50 years of marriage, because it's not going to all be hills. There's going to be a lot of valleys through those 50 years. How are you going to make it through? And so we're so grateful that we now have taken the time to read those books and get that understanding and that knowledge and wisdom we need.
Yeah, because when you go through challenges, I've heard Jimmy Evans, who's a great marriage expert, I've heard him say before, soulmates aren't born, they're created to the trenches of life. Yeah. And when we've gone through some trenches. We've gone through hills, but we've also gone through valleys. And when you link arms and you realize that you're together, that you're one, it's amazing how you come out of that so much better than before you went in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Spark Marriage Conference that's coming up. Yes. Impressive lineup of people, but tell people what it is. And I'd imagine it's good for everyone, not just people in crisis.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah, it's for if people are engaged, if they're dating, if they're married, whether they've been married for 5 minutes or 50 years. Ashlee and I, we looked around. I think it was 2015. We were looking for a marriage conference to attend for ourselves, and we found a few, but nothing that we really linked in with. And we thought, man, what if we could bring some of the greatest marriage experts, some of the greatest communicators to Houston and make it a destination location? So we reached out to some friends and made some phone calls, and this will be our 3rd year. But we have Dr. Gary Chapman, who wrote the 5 love languages. His book's now been on the New York Times bestseller list since '96. Doctors Les and Leslie Parrott. We have Chris Brown, who's a financial expert, which is a great thing for marriages to learn about money. We're also going to interview Pastor Joel and Victoria Osteen. They've been married for 31 years this year. And then we also have John and Aventer Gray, some pastors of ours, friends of ours that are going to share.
Great communicators.
Yeah, so right now people can go online and they can get information at lakewoodchurch.com. They can also register at the event Friday night. Yeah. And we have people coming in from 8 different countries and 40 different states that are flying in just to be a part of this conference.
And what I found, we were talking off camera before the show, y'all had people come to the conference and show up with their divorce papers and say, all right, this is our last ditch effort.
Yeah, we actually talked to one of those couples last year. They had gone through a really rough year. Their son tried to commit suicide. It was a lot on their marriage, and they didn't know where to turn to for help. And so they actually heard about the conference on Sirius XM on Pastor Joel's radio station. They came with their divorce papers in hand of saying, this is it. If we can't work it out with this, we're done. And instead of their divorce papers, they were leaving with a pile of books that they had bought. They were like, we're going to go through each of these books. We're going to spend the next year working on our marriage. We're determined that we're going to make it, that we can do this. And man, does it make a difference when both people want to work on their marriage. That's everything.
That's what I was saying. You mentioned both people. That's actually we had some questions for you guys. It says, what do you do if only one person, I think Alicia wanted to know, what do you do if one person is willing to go to counseling. She said she's been wanting to for 3 months. Her husband keeps saying maybe.
Yeah,
I would tell her go.
Yep.
Go.
Absolutely, even if it's by yourself, go.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of times we find out. I know for me, I wanted somebody to fix her.
Yeah.
You know? But what I realized was that there was a lot of work that I needed to do myself. You know, and so I think going to a counselor is so important. I think getting someone else's perspective on your journey, on the issues that you're facing, is so important, because then it kind of gives you a different perspective, maybe a different set of lenses that you can look through to start making the steps. Because a lot of times what people will find is that their spouse starts watching, oh, they're going to counseling. Oh, wow, they've changed how they respond. Oh, well, maybe I should start coming. So I would really encourage her to start going. I think that would be important.
Yeah,
Just go for it.
It makes me think of his mom and some of her friends had started a prayer group to pray for their husbands, because they weren't happy with how their husbands were treating them at the time. And so they're like, we're just going to get together and pray for them, and just, you know, that God will change them. Well, what they found when they came together was that the Lord was pressing on their heart for them to change themselves. And so she called Clayton one day and she was like, man, she goes, wow, has the Lord really humbled me? Because since we've been praying, I'm the one that I've realized needed the change. And now that I've started making these changes, your dad has noticed, and he's started making changes. You know, because you can't change the other spouse. You can only change yourself for the better. And I think that's a huge thing for people to understand, because you can try all day to change your husband or wife, and they're not.
Oh yeah, I've tried.
Yeah, you
Not
can't do it. They don't respond well to that.
They don't.
So, but
They
when you
don't.
start working on yourself, they see that.
They see that.
And they start changing.
Wonderful. Well, like we said, we want everybody to come, you know, not just people in crisis. All right, so the Spark Marriage Conference gets underway tonight at Lakewood Church. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. and the event begins at 7 p.m. It continues tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. To register, log on to Lakewood Church website. We also have a link on our website, greatdayhouston.com. Thank you. Coming up, known as Australia's favorite storyteller, author Di Morrissey has penned 26 bestsellers. She and her daughter, Dr. Gabrielle Morrissey, stopped by to share what's next on their reading list.